was requested a long time ago by Luis, and he wants to hear T.L. Haddock's Secrets in the Shadows, a novel. The little subtitle is Come See How Dangerous Small Town Living Can Be. So let's find out. I want to apologize in advance for any background noise you might hear downstairs. Doing my best with what I've got going on right now, so hopefully nothing too interrupting will happen, but we'll see. Alright, Chapter 1. Margie Vernon was in a foul mood. No one thing in particular had set her off, but a slow burning hatred seemed to erode her very soul, leaving nothing but the anger behind. As she drove down the interstate, wind whipping through her hair, she took a drag off her cigarette and held the smoke in her lungs until it hurt. Exhaling, she thought about the mess she was leaving behind. Glancing at the clock on the car's dashboard, she saw that it was nearly 9 o'clock. The sun had been up for 3 hours. She felt a tiny pang of guilt thinking about what had gone on the previous night. Her cousin Lauren hadn't had a clue what Margie had in store for her when she went to bed last night. It was late enough now for Lauren to be awake and know what happened. Or maybe not, if the drug Margie had given her had done its job. She felt a wave of nausea roll through her stomach. Cursing, she chalked it up to morning sickness and started looking for the nearest exit. When she saw the sign denoting a rest area ahead, she had to bite her lip to keep from crying with relief. She refused to acknowledge her grief and guilt, instead blaming her distress on the child she carried in her womb. A short while later, she was back in the car, feeling the need to put more miles between Indiana and herself. After all, the last thing she wanted was to get caught in a stolen car. Margie hadn't always hated Lauren, quite the contrary. They'd been as close as sisters, perhaps closer, ever since they were respectively 9 and 8 years old. Cousins by marriage, they saw each other at family events, holidays, reunions, and the like. During the summer, the girls would visit each other, spending 2 weeks at a time at each other's houses. They had healthy childhoods for the most part, at least until things changed. The third of 6 children, Margie had always been happy, making good grades and quietly setting goals for her future. Her plans didn't mesh well with the ideals and plans of her devoutly religious and fundamentally conservative parents. I love them, but I don't want to be them. I want a life outside of hearth and home, she told Lauren the last time they'd really talked, at the family's Labor Day picnic the previous year. Carl and Mary Margaret Vernon had the tendency to come across as superior when questioned about their beliefs. When Margie had expressed intent in going to college to become a teacher, they were taken aback. They couldn't understand where her independent streak had come from and dismissed her wants and desires, blaming outside influences for her disregard of the traditional woman's role. Lauren, whose parents always encouraged her and supported her dreams, was infuriated, but Margie brushed aside her concern. I'll keep my head down and let them think I'm towing the line. When I turn 18, I'll be ready to go to college and they won't be able to stop me. She learned to keep her ideals and opinions to herself, quietly planning the course her future would take. Then, a few months after her 16th birthday, it happened. She'd been so shocked the first time, she almost thought she'd imagined it, but there had been the blood and the soreness. When her father had sneaked into her bedroom that night, it seemed funny at first. After all, she loved her father, trusted him. He made a joke out of it, at least in the beginning. By the time she realized he wasn't playing, that it wasn't a game, her innocence was gone forever. There's no need to tell your mother about this, you know. I gave her something to help her sleep tonight. This can be our secret, something we can share. It's not like anyone would believe you anyhow. He patted her on the head and left. She waited a long time before easing out of bed and into the bathroom down the hall, where she proceeded to scrub her skin until it was raw. When she got back to her bedroom, she crawled never slept in her old bed again after that, and she never allowed him to use her in the other one. Checking her gas gauge, she saw that it was closing in on empty. She decided to pull off at the next exit and refuel. Maybe stretch her legs a little bit. She'd been driving since midnight the night before, and as she swerved a little on the exit ramp, she realized she should probably find somewhere to get some sleep. Signs on the ramp pointed toward a seedy chain motel, and she aimed the car in that direction with very little effort. Just a flash of cleavage and a fake ID, she had herself a room. She didn't even turn on the light, just shut the door, closed the curtains, and fell on the bed. When Margie woke up several hours later, she was starving. Sitting up, she felt the pressing need to visit the bathroom. While in there, she went ahead and took a shower. Despite her best efforts, her mind kept returning to home. She'd been in a downward spiral for several weeks, ever since she discovered that she was pregnant. Apparently, that spiral had been fodder for the family grapevine. Her mother had been livid when she found out. You've shamed us with your behavior. Girl, you're no good, a bad seed. I've called the pastor about you and your whorish ways, and he's found a man who will take you. You're gonna marry him, and I'll wash my hands of you. Margie laughed in her face. Old woman, I won't marry some man you pick out for me. I'm 17 years old now, and you can't touch me. Mary Margaret slapped her so hard she knocked Maggie down. Honor thy father and mother, the good book says. Satan himself has hold of you. With a sneer, Maggie got to her feet. Margie, blotting away the blood from her split lip. I do honor my father. I honor him every night when he comes to my bed. Margie thought her mother might have killed her on the spot if her father had come into the kitchen at that very moment. The annual family reunion took place 3 long weeks afterward in Madison, Indiana. The day was etched into her mind, a scar that shone brightly alongside several others. Though Maggie had been planning to leave at the end of summer, she hadn't been planning the rest. Everything changed that day. The day she'd started plotting her cousin's downfall. Margie had been on pins and needles for several days. Her lip had healed and she was running on pure nerves. The day of the family reunion dawned bright and sunny, a day completely opposite the somber and sullen mood of the Vernon family. As they piled in the car and motored down to the state park, they arrived early, like always, helping the others set up for the expected crowd. She'd run into Molly and Winston Taylor, Lauren's parents, almost as soon as they got there. Margie, honey, it's good to see you. How are you? Molly hugged her tightly and then drew her back to study her. You've lost some weight, and I swear you're 2 inches taller. Margie smiled, trying to mask her dismay. I'm okay, Aunt Molly. Where's my cuz? She's coming up a little later with her brother. She was working late into the evening, tutoring one of her classmates in algebra. I know, she's anxious to see you. The two of you haven't had much of a chance to visit with each other lately. I'm looking forward to seeing her too. They walked to Molly's van to get the casserole she'd brought. Did you bring your bag to go back with us for a week? Margie's gaze flew to hers. No, I didn't know if you'd want me this year. Lauren's mother frowned. Why in the world not? Look, we know you've had some problems lately, but you'll always be welcome in our home. You know that. She had almost broken down then and there and confessed everything. If her mother hadn't hollered across the picnic grounds at her, she might have begged for help. But Mary Margaret had yelled, and the moment was lost. A couple hours later, Lauren pulled up and let her brother Tristan out with several bags full of supplies. Before Margie could reach her car, Lauren left. Where'd she go? Margie asked Tristan. Tristan grinned. Hey, Margie, she can't find a place to park. She's going back up the road a little ways. He loped off towards the shelters with the bag, and Margie Before she reached the main road through the park, however, a large pickup pulled up alongside of her. The driver was a man she'd seen at parties before around town. "Hey babe, fancy meeting you here." With an inward groan, she leaned against the trunk. A fake smile plastered on her face. "Yeah, fancy that. What are you doing here?" He reached out and touched her shoulder with a suggestive caress. "Oh, just looking for something to do. You available?" She swallowed against the bile that rose at its suggestion, looking down to conceal her eyes. Having practiced in the mirror, she knew the move looked flirtatious. "That depends. Do you have any reason I should be?" His smile was cocky. "I have 50 reasons you should be." She backed up a step. "Then why don't you park this truck and follow me?" He did just that, pulling into the grass to park illegally. As they crossed the parking lot, Margie saw Lauren duck into the restroom. Inspired, she took her date's hand and dragged him in that direction. "Oh, kinky." "Give me the money," she held out her hand, and he handed her a $50 bill. They went into the largest stall, and she let him have her. Thankfully, most men didn't seem to last long when they had to perform in situations like this. She'd been pimping out her body for a couple months now, and she had quite a stash of money saved up. It was tremendously ironic, the body that had been her downfall providing her with a means to escape, hopefully. She didn't even bother asking him to don a condom. As far as she was concerned, her life was over. It wasn't as if she could get more pregnant. When he finished, the man zipped his pants. "Baby, I heard you were a good ride. I gotta say, you were worth every penny." She cleaned herself up with toilet paper, then opened the stall door. "I'll go first to make sure it's clear. Wait here until I look. If we get caught." "Yeah, I know you're not exactly legal now. I haven't any desire to end up in jail even for a nice piece like you." She made sure the coast was clear, then ushered him out of the building. Once in the parking lot, they went their separate ways. Thinking about Lauren, who had been quiet as a mouse the entire time they'd been inside, she felt her mouth twist in a tight grimace. For so long, Margie hadn't had an outlet for her anger. She loathed her parents, of course, but her situation had almost precarious. She had to be careful how much hostility she showed, at least until it was time for her to leave. Lauren, however, made the perfect target. Her cousin represented everything Margie no longer had. Good grades, loving parents, a normal life. It served Miss Goody Two-Shoes right, being stuck inside of public restrooms while strangers had sex. After getting a quick meal at a nearby diner, she hit the road again, heading for Georgia and the cousin. She'd made it to Tennessee before collapsing that morning, and only had a few more hours to go till she reached her destination. During the last couple weeks, Lauren had tried repeatedly to get her to tell her what was going on. Margie steadfastly refused. They spent the first week at Lauren's and the second at Margie's. The first night they were back, Margie's father approached her with the proposition. "Look, I know you're pregnant. You can't hide it much longer, and I don't want to have to answer any more uncomfortable questions. It's been bad enough for the past few months explaining your behavior, but I have a plan that will get us both something we want." To an outsider, they looked like a father and daughter standing at the fence row having a talk in the fading twilight. "What do you have in mind?" "I know about your little boyfriend. Did you really think you could hide him from me?" He snickered. "Anyhow, I want you to get the hell out of here. I bet you want out too. You don't want him to find out about us, what you really are. If you do something for me, I'll not only tell him your dirty little secret, I'll give you $500 cash." "I'm interested. What do you want to have me do?" He held out his hand. A white oblong bill in its center. "Tonight's from tonight. Slip this to your cousin. It'll knock her out and she won't remember a thing. I'll give your mother one once they're out. You leave. Then I'll have some fun and nobody will be the wiser." Margie felt sick at the suggestion. "I won't do that. You're crazy." Her father laughed. "No? Then I guess I'll go have a talk with this boy you think you love so much." She didn't know that he was aware of her relationship relationship with Travis Tyler. She had met him back in the winter at a party and they hit it off. Sure, the sex was good, but more importantly, he treated her well. They talked to each other and he cared about her, or at least he had, until she had broken it off with him a few weeks earlier. Still, she didn't want Travis to know about her relationship with their father. You'll wear a condom and you won't get her pregnant. When he placed his hand on her shoulder, it took everything in her not to pull away. Knowing other people might be watching, though, she held still. Do you think I want her father over here asking questions? Margie shook her head. Smart girl. I'll wear a condom and I'll clean her up after I'm done. She won't have a clue anything's happened. She took the pill from him and 2 nights later she crushed it, putting it in a milkshake she had made for Lauren. Once her cousin was asleep, she grabbed the bag she packed, along with Lauren's car keys and the money, and slipped out. Her father was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. She's out. Mutely, she nodded. That's my girl. He handed her the money and a slip of paper that has the name and address of one of my cousins on it. He owes me a favor and he's expecting you. He'll get you a new car that can't be traced, and he won't ask questions. She looked at the paper, which had an address in Georgia. Then where do I go? He shrugged. I don't care, just go on and get out of here and don't ever come back. Her emotions frozen, she walked out the door, got in Lauren's little car and drove away. She didn't look back once. Chapter 2, 13 years later. Lauren Taylor Grant was setting up the snack trays for the Ladies' Business League meeting when that month's hostess, Beth Hudson, reached into the room. Breathless and apologetic, they were holding the meeting in the boardroom at the offices of the Ullman County Journal, the newspaper at which Beth worked as a reporter. Lauren, thank God, I'm so sorry I'm late. I had an interview that ran over. They just wouldn't stop talking. What can I do? Lauren laughed. You're fine. Grab the bag on the table if you don't mind, and take out the plates and napkins. The utensils should be in there as well. As her friend grabbed the bag and moved to stand beside her, Lauren asked who she'd been interviewing. Remember Gus Leroy? He was a few years ahead of you in school. You mean the guy whose parents owned the pharmacy? When Beth nodded, she shrugged. Vaguely. Didn't he move away to California or somewhere? Yep. He moved back a few months ago to help take care of his parents. Really nice, sweet guy. He's a physical therapist now, and he's opening up a clinic across from the pharmacy. Anyhow, I started interviewing him, and things were fine, but then his mom came in and I got stuck there. Cool lady and all, but wow, she can talk. They finished setting up the food, and the members of the league started to arrive. The Ladies' Business League, or LBL, had been established in the late 70s when more women started opening businesses in the community. Before long, it grew into a force to be reckoned with in Ullman County, handling a wide variety of functions, including spearheading Leroy's tourism-oriented revival. Situated on the Ohio River in southern Indiana, the town had been long known for its annual 4th of July celebration, and through planning and hard work, semi-annual spring and fall antique fairs were introduced. Several bed and breakfast inns were opened in some of the older houses, and Highway 7, which ran along the riverfront for much of the length of the town, was named Scenic Byway. It didn't take very long for Leroy and Ullman County to become a hotspot on tourist maps. The addition of a weekly farmers market in the large park on the town square, as well as a monthly flea market, drew a solid trade from tourists and locals alike. As the last members of the group came in, Beth closed the door and called the meeting to order. She received quite a bit of grooming from the older and younger women alike, being very well known for her lack of domestic skills. Very funny, she said after one remark. You'd all just better be glad Lauren is able to help me out when it's my turn, or we'd all be eating generic Oreos and drinking Kool-Aid. After the meeting was over and the crowd had dispersed, Lauren got a chance to speak with her older best friend, Annie Jameson Tucker, the owner of Annie's Arbor, the most popular flower shop, and called her earlier in the day, but it had been during the lunch rush and she hadn't been able to take the call. I got your message, but I didn't get a chance to call you cousin Jeff is coming in from Nashville, and I thought it might be fun to do a double date. Though she, Annie, and Beth were best friends, the constant matchmaking got a little old. You've been trying to get me to go out with him for how long now? Lauren sighed. I don't know, Annie. I've got a lot to do. Beth walked up, overhearing part of the conversation. She poked Lauren's shoulder gently. Aren't you Sam's child this week? I am. Go out with the band, then. You might just surprise yourself and have fun. You do remember what that is, don't you? Lauren rolled her eyes. I seem to remember it, yes. Wednesday night, you said. Yep, it'll just be for a few hours. He has to head out early Thursday, so it'll be an early night. She gave in. Alright, well, I guess I can use a night out of the house. Annie jumped up and down. Yay, this is going to be so cool. So, who's your man of the evening going to be? Beth teased. Well, I was going to talk to you about that. She glanced at Beth and then down at her fingernails, inspecting them closely as she mumbled a name. Who? Lauren asked. Beth shrugged to say she hadn't understood either, and took her hair down from its clip. The blonde tresses reached halfway down her back. Speak up, girl. We'll get old just standing here, she said as she retwisted her hair and clipped it back. It's Jason. Jason Hudson, your brother. I know who Jason is. Why do you think that would upset me? Unless you guys are planning on running off to Vegas or something. Annie made a face. Not hardly. It's just a date between friends. He's a fun guy. And there's no chance he'll want more at the end of the evening. Anyhow, I'll call you on Monday, she told Lauren. I need to head back to the shop. I still have a couple of orders that need to go out. You could do worse for a sister-in-law, Lauren said as she watched Annie walk away. Very true, but they don't spark. They both deserve someone who makes them spark. I like your haircut, by the way. Thanks. Self-consciously, Lauren smoothed her hair back behind her ears. She changed her hairstyle last weekend after years of wearing it pulled back in a ponytail. The sleek and shiny brown tresses now moved freely around her face, and Lauren was amazed at how much younger she looked with the new cut. I told you the classic bob would suit you, Beth remarked with an impish grin. You should listen to me more often. Lauren laughed, not disagreeing, then looked at her watch. Crap, I'd better head out too. I want to hit the library and browse for a while before they close this evening. I'm going to try and catch up on my reading this week while Ava's gone. What are your plans tonight? I have a late dinner interview with the handsome new doctor, Jed Ormsby. He looks like a young Robert Redford, so I shouldn't have to suffer too much to get through dinner. Lauren smiled. Who knows? Maybe he'll be the one who puts stars in your eyes and makes you spark. Beth was a serial dater, and sometimes Lauren worried that her friend would never find the happiness she deserved. Beth's mouth twisted wryly. Somehow I doubt it. I just don't think I'm one of those people for whom love is in the cards. Besides, I try and avoid dating doctors. They tend to have an exaggerated opinion of themselves, with a few notable exceptions. She wrinkled her nose. One of the exceptions was her father, Richard, who was the town's most respected physician. I'll still keep my fingers crossed for you. Do you want me to stay here and help you clean up? No, don't even think about it. She shooed Lauren out the door. I may not be able to cook, but I can clean with the best of them. I'll take care of it. Go get some books to curl up with. I wish I could do that this weekend, but I'm on call and I would only be interrupted. Lauren waved goodbye and left the boardroom, heading down the stairs and through the newsroom to the front door. As she stepped onto the sidewalk, the sound of a woman's husky laugh caught her attention. Glancing across the park, she saw Charity Vaughn, one of the LBL members, engaged in what appeared to be a flirtatious conversation with a handsome blonde man. Charity had moved to Leroy about 3 years ago, surprising everyone by opening an upscale art gallery on the town square. Some said Leroy wouldn't be able to sustain such an endeavor, but the tall movie star, beautiful redhead, had made it a success. While she waited for a break in the traffic, she glanced back over at the couple and saw that Charity had moved in to lightly touch the man's chest. Seeing how easily the other woman flirted, she gave a wistful laugh. She didn't have that sort of confidence with men, even though she had garnered plenty of interest from the opposite sex throughout the years. Finally, traffic cleared, and she pulled out of the parking spot and headed for the library. Renovated a few years back, the main branch of the Ullman County Library was an airy and inviting space, a huge improvement over the facility's previous institutional feel. The children's area had been expanded to include a second story, and several interior walls had been removed, opening the space up and letting in natural light from a new bank of windows in the atrium. Lauren walked up to the circulation desk, returning the stack of books she and Neva had checked out the previous week. As she set the books down, she smiled at Stella Moore, who was on the phone answering a question about genealogy. Stella held up her index finger, indicating that Lauren should stay there. The call finished. She turned away to grab a bundle of books Lauren had placed on hold. She took Lauren's library card with a tired smile. Long day. Long week, Sheila replied as she began scanning the books. I'm glad I don't have to come in and work this weekend. I hear that. I'm not working at the shop tomorrow, so I actually get to sleep in a little bit. Are you helping your mom with her booth at the farmer's market? Stella asked, referring to the booth of their homemade jams, jellies, and breads Molly usually set up every week. Yep, Dad's still recuperating from his surgery, so I'm subbing for him. And where's your little munchkin? She's with her dad, Ava. Lauren's 7-year-old daughter was the light of her life. Thrilled with a cafe, coffee shop, bakery she owned. The brown bag kept her busy. It was Ava who gave her a reason to get up in the morning. After chatting for a few more minutes with Stella, Lauren took the nearly full book bag and excused herself to head back to the new arrival section, enjoying not having to rush as she browsed. She was eager to try a couple of new authors, including the works of a mystery writer whose name she kept hearing in the shop. Perusing the title, she spotted the one of the books she was after. As she read the blurb, she became aware of someone standing behind her. She quickly glanced up and saw that she was blocking the shelf. Moving aside, she apologized and walked further down the row, making sure she wasn't in anyone's way before she decided to stop and finish reading the blurb. Impressed, she decided to give the author a try. Dropping the book into her nearly overflowing book bag, she walked around to the back of the shelf, where more new arrivals were kept. She trailed her finger along the spines of the books until she settled on one that looked interesting and pulled it out. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed another patron come around the far end of the bookshelf. His gaze focused on the books in front of him. Tall and lanky with dark brown hair that was a little long, he wore faded but well-fitting jeans and a gray t-shirt. His foot moved in time with the fingers he tapped on his denim-clad thigh, and as Lauren watched, he pulled a book from the shelf with a satisfied smile. Catching her breath, she returned her eyes to the books in front of her, surprised at her reaction. Just proves you aren't dead yet, old girl, she thought. Reining in her response, she moved down the row, very aware of the man's close proximity to her. Spying another book she wanted at the bottom of the shelf, she stooped down and reached for it just as Stella came around the corner, a book in hand. There you are, Lauren. This other book you had on hold just came in, and I didn't want you to leave without it. Standing, Lauren thanked her and took back the paperback. Stella patted her on the shoulder and headed back, smiling up at the man as she passed. Hi, Charlie. He nodded and returned her smile. Hey, Stella. As she laughed, he looked at Lauren, and his smile widened. Walking over, he tilted his head to the side, studying her face. You're Lauren Grant, right? Wynn and Molly's daughter. I am. She shifted her book back to her left arm. Do I know you? No, but you've probably heard my name. I'm Charlie Clark, your parents' new neighbor. Shifting his own books, he held out his hand. Her jaw dropped. I thought you were older, she blurted, making him laugh. As she realized what she'd said, her cheeks burned with embarrassment. She returned his handshake. That's that didn't come out right. It's just that my dad talks about you as though you're his contemporary. Don't worry about it. I was wondering if we were ever going to meet, or if you were just a figment of Wynn and Molly's imagination, and Ava was just some random child who wandered in from time to time. I was beginning to wonder myself. You've really helped Dad keep his sanity these last few weeks, you know. Having you there to talk to has been a godsend. I hear you're into RC. Winston had a passion for remote-controlled vehicles, and he had been thrilled to discover that their new neighbor shared his hobby. I do like RC, and if I've helped Win, I'm glad. He's a pretty cool guy, and I've enjoyed getting to know him. He gestured toward the books she held in her hand. Have you read any of her other books? Lauren glanced at the book, turning it over to study the cover. No, this will be the first one I've read by her. I've heard a lot of chatter around the shop about her books, though, so I'm looking forward to curling up with this. She's good. I think you'll enjoy her. Glancing at his watch, he winced. I hate to run, but I've got to get to work. It was nice to finally meet you, to be able to put a face to the name. Lauren agreed as they walked up to the circulation desk. Yes, it is. You're working at the lighthouse. I am, at least a few weeks longer, until Sonny doesn't need me anymore. How is he? The restaurant's owner had recently undergone bypass surgery. How is he? Much better than his doctors anticipated. Charlie handed his library card to Stella, who efficiently scanned his books. I'll see you around, he asked Lauren. You have to let me know what you think about that author. I'll do that. He smiled and tipped in a cherry hat toward her and Stella, then walked out the door. They watched him walk away, and the older woman let out a sigh as he disappeared. Lauren looked at her, eyebrows raised. Stella shrugged and grinned. What can I say? I like tall, lanky, dark-haired men. Just because I'm old enough to be his mother doesn't mean I can't appreciate the way he wears his clothes. Lauren laughed, blushing. He does wear those jeans awfully well. She handed Stella the book she'd chosen. Didn't he buy the house next to your parents? Apparently he did, but this is the first time I've met him. Between his work schedule and mine, well, we've been missing each other for weeks now. You know how that goes. I do know how that goes. She slid the books back across the counter, and Lauren returned them to her bag. Maybe you should make him some homemade cookies or a pie or something, Stella suggested, waggling her eyebrows. Lauren shook her head. Oh, no, I'm not going there. I have Ava to raise and a business to run. I don't have time for a man. Wishing Stella a good evening, she headed out the door. As she reached her vehicle, her cell phone rang. Glancing at the screen, she saw that it was her mother. Hey, Mom. She tossed her bag into the passenger seat and got inside. Hey, honey, what time are we meeting in the morning? 7:30. That's what we agreed on. Are you sure you don't need me to help you load up at the house? No, Charlie helped with most of it today. Thanks for asking, though. Lauren squirmed in her seat. I met him, Mom. Why didn't you tell me he was so young? He's probably a few years older than me, only. You know what they say about making assumptions. Mom, he probably thinks I'm a crazy lady, Lauren told him. Lauren told him about what she'd said. It was a little embarrassing, to tell the truth. I hope I didn't offend him. Molly laughed. Don't worry about it, honey. That won't offend Charlie. He probably got a kick out of it. Lauren snorted, giving in and laughing with her mother. They talked for a few more minutes before hanging up, and as she started the engine and pulled out of the parking space, she tried to forget the way Charlie Clark's face lit up when he smiled. Chapter 3. Saturday morning dawned bright and sunny, promising to be a beautiful day. At 7:30, however, it was still a little cool, and the breeze blowing off the river made light sweaters and long sleeves a necessity. Lauren parked next to Town Square and yawned, grabbing her coffee. She got out and leaned against the side of her SUV as she waited for her parents. Other vendors began setting up their tables and tents, and soon the large park was filled with the sound as tent spikes were driven into the ground and instructions were shouted to helpers. A Native American craftsman set up a jewelry booth selling silver and gold, worked into stunning pieces around semi-precious stones. Old Miss McCulloch, 80 received hundreds of dollars for each blanket. The New Age crowd was drawn to the Shangri-La books booth full of candles, incense, salt rock lamps, and dream catchers. Booths full of books, antiques, dishes, used junk from other people's attics, cosmetics, and a large assortment of other goods were open for a diverse shopping crowd. Molly had chosen to set up her booth on the side of the 2-acre park nearest the brown bag, knowing the location would be convenient if someone needed to run over to the shop and grab something. Looking around the park, Lauren smiled, proud of her mother's enterprise. A successful insurance agent, Molly was just as well known for her talents in the kitchen. Though she had sold her wares at the farmer's market for years, she decided a couple years earlier to slow down at the insurance agency she co-owned with 2 other agents and focus on her homemade goods. She did a thriving business, usually selling every item she brought. It wasn't unusual for her to end up giving rain checks to customers, then billing those orders during the week. Lauren was just finishing her coffee when her mother pulled up to park behind her truckload with supplies. She put the mug in her SUV and walked back to meet her parents. When she saw that her mother was alone, she was surprised. "Where's Daddy?" A black truck pulled up beside her mother's, and her father hopped out of the passenger side waving. "Oh, he rode with Charlie. He's going to help with the heavy stuff here today." Lauren didn't say anything, and her father came around the front of the truck to hug her. "I hear you met our boy yesterday. What'd you think?" She laughed. "I don't know, Daddy. He seemed nice enough, I guess, but it was a 5-minute conversation. He has good taste in authors, though." Looking at her mother, she teased, "Are you gonna let him have a sleepover soon so he and Daddy could stay up all night, telling dirty jokes and farting?" Molly laughed and headed around to the back of the truck. "They do that already." Winston puffed up his chest in mock outrage. "We do not tell dirty jokes. We may tell bad jokes, but not dirty jokes." As Charlie walked up, her father pointed at him. "Tell my daughter that we don't sit around and swap dirty jokes. I don't know who puts these ideas in her head." Lauren's mouth opened with surprise at having the tables turned so firmly on her. She felt her face turning red. "I didn't mean it that way." Charlie was trying not to laugh, and she shook her head and started for the back of her mother's truck. Not a word. She warned and walked past him. He held his hands up and kept his mouth shut, though her words didn't dampen the wide grin on his face. As they unloaded the vehicles, making sure her father handled only the lightest loads, she felt Charlie's gaze several times between her blurred comment last night and their latest exchange. She was certain he thought she was certifiable. With an inward cringe, she sighed. Molly smiled sympathetically. "Are you missing Ava? You're sounding troubled." "Yeah, but that's not what I was thinking about. It was nothing really. Where do you want these flavored oils?" "How about on this table here?" Molly gestured to the folding table they'd set up at the side of the tent. That way they're a little more protected from the front table, but still accessible to customers. Setting down the box where her mother had indicated, she unpacked it. It was her mother's spicy pepper blend. Extra virgin olive oil infused with jalapenos and crushed red pepper flakes. Lauren knew from first-hand experience how good and hot it was. Emptying the box, she placed it underneath the table and grabbed a marker, writing the flavor and price on an index card in front of the bottles. Turning, she bumped into Charlie, who had just set down the last box from the truck. "I'm so sorry," she told him as he studied her before she could bump into the table behind her. "Now you'll think I'm clumsy as well as crazy." He laughed. "Not a chance. I'm sure Wynn would have said something before now if you were truly dangerous, and Ava seems perfectly normal." Lauren groaned silently as she started preparing the 2 large commercial-sized coffee makers she'd brought. She also provided filtered water, coffee grounds, cups, stirrers, sugar, and cream. Molly covered the cost for the supplies, using the drinks as a draw for the customers, and Lauren was able to promote the brown bag while helping her mother. Winston walked up in time to hear her laugh, and turned to Molly. They're over here, telling dirty jokes. After she jumped all over me for doing it, now she's doing it herself." see how it is. Daddy, you're incorrigible. Molly leaned into him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Changing the subject, how long are you sticking around this morning? She included Charlie in her question. Not that we wouldn't be glad to have you, but it's getting to be about that time, and I know you're not overly fond of manning the booth. Lauren's father winced. No, it's not my favorite way to pass the time. We'll head out and leave you ladies to it. What time do you think you'll wrap things up today? I'd say around 1. There'll probably be a heavy crowd, so everything should sell pretty quickly. I'll give you a call if we're going to be later. She leaned up and gave him a kiss. What time do we have to be in at the lighthouse, Charlie? Winston shook. Winston asked, are you working a double today? He shook his head. No, I'm just on this afternoon. I'll need to be there about 3 or 4, so I should have plenty of time to come back and help you load and unload. Molly walked over and tugged his face down to her, giving him a smacking kiss on each cheek. Lauren was amused to see his cheeks turn pink. Have you figured out what you're going to charge me for labor? He shrugged, shoving his hands in his pocket. I kind of figured I'd leave it up to you. Everything you make is good, so I'm in pretty safe hands. She sighed, sounding perplexed. That doesn't help. What sounds good? Why don't we start with that? Charlie shot a quick glance at Lauren, a small smile playing around his mouth. How about something with strawberries? I really like strawberries, and they're in season right now. Tapping her chin, Molly considered his answer and smiled. I know exactly what to make for you then. So, do you have everything you need before we go? Winston asked his wife. I think we're good to go. She looked at Charlie. Thanks for your help. We really do appreciate it. My pleasure, and I'll see you this afternoon. He nodded to Lauren and Winston before he walked to his truck. With a little wave, he started the engine and drove away. I guess I'll head out too then, if you're sure you don't need anything, Winston said, moving to kiss Molly again. Lauren threw him a distracted smile as she waited on a customer who had walked up and was asking about flavored oils. I do need one more thing before you go, if you don't mind, Molly told him. Go over to Randy's and get me a flat of strawberries. He nodded. No problem. Anything else? No, that's it. I'll see you later then. He headed off in the direction of Randy Jarvis's booth to get the berries. For the next couple of hours, a steady stream of people moved through the booth. Lauren and Molly stayed busy, barely having time to catch their breath. By the time the crowd thinned out at 10 o'clock, they were both more than ready for a break. Oh, that was intense. Lauren stretched her legs out in front of her and sipped cold water. I thought those two ladies were actually going to fight over the last bottle of rosemary oil. Molly laughed. So did I. Thank God you found that other one in the back. If we hadn't, we'd have probably made the newspaper. It's an ego boost, though, having people that enthusiastic about something you've created. They sat for a few minutes watching the passerby and answering occasional questions. So, are you ready to tell me what's on your mind? Lauren was surprised. How did you know? Never mind, I know. It's that mom thing, she said. I don't know. I was just thinking about your neighbor mostly. She kept her gaze in her lap and picked at the label at her water bottle. What do you know about him? She watched her closely as she answered. He's a little older than you. He isn't married, and I don't think he's ever been. He used to be in the Marines, and he runs his own business. He moved back here 2 months ago and seems to lead a pretty quiet life. She tilted her head to the side. You don't remember him from when you were growing up? No, I don't. I've racked my brain, and if I've met him, I don't remember it. I know his dad. He's a regular at the cafe. Her mother sighed. I don't think they have much of a relationship. Charlie hasn't said much about it, but from what he said, I think they've been estranged for years. I believe his mother works for a law office up in Madison. So they're divorced, I take it. Molly nodded. For a long time now. I do know that much. What is it he does exactly? Lauren asked. She didn't even bother pretending she wasn't interested. I'm not sure exactly. It's some kind of sent her a puzzled glance. She explained. When I asked Charlie what sounded good, he threw a little look in your direction. I thought for a minute he was going to tell me that you did. Lauren gasped. Mom, he did not. Oh, he most certainly did. Why shouldn't he be interested in you? You're of a similar age. You're both attractive and unattached. I'd be lying if I said I hadn't considered him for you. She gave a small shrug and moved on to the next booth. Lauren decided that changing the subject might not be a bad idea. Have you found that shower curtain you were looking for? Throwing her daughter an amused and knowing glance, she nonetheless answered the question. Not yet. I'm going to try to persuade your father to drive to New Salem tomorrow morning. Want to come along? No, but thanks. I'm planning on sleeping late in the morning and being utterly lazy all day. If I take a shower, I'll consider myself ambitious. You'll be up at the crack of dawn cleaning the entire house, and you know it. She chuckled. You're probably right, but it's hard to change old habits. I'm going to try to be lazy, though. I picked up a stack of books, and I'm looking forward to getting through them. At least a couple of them. You're still planning on coming to dinner, though, right? Wouldn't miss it, Lauren assured her. As they reached their booth, they saw that the men had just returned and were packing it up. Charlie had just finished folding the canopy and was putting it back in its bag, and Winston was trying to figure out how to open the coffee machine. Seeing them approach, he backed off, his hands held up in surrender. I'll leave it to the expert. Molly, where do you need me? She directed him to fold the tablecloths and put them in the empty boxes. Charlie returned from taking the canopy to the truck. Where do you want the leftover coffee dumped? In the storm drain is fine. Let me get the filters out first, though. As he reached down into the second pot, Lauren felt a tingle run down her spine. Frowning, she looked up and around. Her mother and father were at the back of the truck, apparently arguing over Wynn's ability to lift something. Lauren tried to shrug it off, but the sensation of something being wrong, of someone watching her, grew stronger. Charlie had finished emptying the first urn and was walking back. When he saw the expression on her face, he frowned and touched her arm. What's wrong? She shook her head, trying to shake off the feeling. I don't know. I feel like someone's watching me. I can't figure out, though. Who, though? She scanned the crowds, her gaze locked in on a woman across the park, and she drew in a sharp breath. He quickly looked in the same direction. Who is it? Wendy, she didn't respond. He said her name. She shook her head slowly, and then hearing her parents' voice nearing, took a deep breath to steady her nerves. Don't tell my parents, she begged Charlie. He frowned but kept silent as Winston and Molly approached them. When she finished taking out the filter, he lifted the pot and carried it off to empty it. Keeping her head down, she gathered the unused cups and other items, stashing them in their box. Her parents turned over the table and the coffee makers had been sitting on, folded the legs, and lifted it to carry it to the truck. Both a little grim-faced. When Charlie returned, he glanced at them and then back at Lauren, a questioning look on his face. She waited until they were out of earshot before answering. Apparently, they argued about his ability to lift. That isn't really what I was wondering about. You looked as though you'd seen a ghost a few minutes ago. Want to tell me about that? She shook her head. I thought I saw someone I knew from years ago. I don't know, it probably wasn't her. At least, I hope not. It's no big deal, she said, not wanting to get into details. It was just a surprise, is all. They made sure everything was packed up, then joined her at her parents' and Molly's truck. Lauren unlocked her SUV. Charlie lifted the coffee makers into the back and closed the tailgate. Do you want me to follow you back to the house? She asked. Winston shook his head. We've got it covered, honey. You've done enough for today. He gave her a hug. We'll see you tomorrow evening. Sure thing, Daddy. He hugged her mother and pulled away. Smiling at Charlie, she thanked him for helping. I'll see you all later. Just call me if you need anything. As she pulled out onto the street, she kept a smile firmly on her face until she was out of sight. She forced herself to breathe slowly, trying to think calmly about the woman she'd seen across the park. It had been 13 years, but Lauren recognized her instantly. The last time Secrets in the Shadows. There we go. By T.L. Addicts. So, I hope you enjoyed that reading, and I am hoping to relaunch Saturday Night Stories soon. I have a couple old requests, but they're probably way logged back in like my Facebook messages. So, if you have something you want me to read for you, I would appreciate if you requested it. And you can do that a couple ways. You can just leave a comment down there about what you'd like me to read. We can set up a Kindle share. I am open to reading anything as long as buying it isn't extremely expensive. Also into loaning books. Libraries are great. So we have options for sure. Next week, I think I'm gonna read something a little bit physics related, probably from the Book of Fabrics of the Cosmos by Brian Greene. I think it's pretty easy to digest, and I've been reading it and enjoying it. So I was thinking about reading that next. So hopefully I'll be back next week, and the movie will be published on Saturday, so I can call it a Saturday Night Story. And I hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in being my friend on Facebook or following me on Instagram, the details are in my channel information, channel bio. And if you do look at my Instagram, there's a link to my Snapchat and Kick Messenger. So, if you're interested in that as well, it's there for you. I would like to remind everyone to keep in mind that I'm only one person, and I get a fair amount of Facebook messages every day, and just keep in mind that I can't reply to all of them with super fast efficiency.